While others debated the course of fate, the Vizarch sought solitude. The nagging opinions of seers had always irritated him, though he knew himself well enough to understand that it was his inability to shape his fate that had contributed in major part to the wanderlust that had ruled much of his life. With Aeneiad, and in the company of Yvraine in particular, he had found a peculiar sort of peace, a contentment that had eluded him in the service of war as an exarch, and a life of mercenary killing when an incubi hierarch, but was now to be found as a servant of the dead. Feeling prying eyes and minds on him in the domes of the seers, he sought more familiar environs, where honest inquiry did not travel, to the shrines of Khaine. He knew little enough of Ulthwé or its layout, but the beating iron heart of the bloody-handed god was a beacon to his thoughts, drawing him across the great plates and domes, across mountains and down the levels to the core of the Craftworld. Deep within the structures of Ulthwé lay the shrine of the Aspect Warriors, a maze of subdomes linked by dark tunnels and bright highways, leading to vistas and temples he could only guess at. But if he was expecting welcome, he was mistaken. At the first arch stood a warrior in the magnificent bone-coloured armour and bright mane crest of the Howling Banshees, her executioner blade held across her chest. A wave of antipathy greeted the Vizarch when he stopped, the pulse of hostility enough to still the ritual greetings on his tongue. The Exarch's murderous gaze followed him along the corridor as he moved on, lingering until he came into view of another, a black-clad Dark Reaper Exarch, stood beneath the rune of his shrine, which translated as the Broken Storm, his missile launcher pointing unwaveringly at the interloper. Here too, the Vizarch was met with cold contempt. The chill hatred of the Dark Reaper crackled along the buried matrix of the Infinity Circuit, making itself felt at the edge of thought. A shudder of distaste trembled through the psychic network, arranged web-like through the many shrines of the Craftworld, the throne room of the slumbering avatar of Khaine at its heart. Ulthwé was an ancient domain, the Aspect Temples numbered in their hundreds, and ill intent flowed towards the Vizarch from all of them. "Traitor!" the meme fort snarled. Along the circuit, he could feel others regarding him, standing at the thresholds of their sacred places. He could see many of them, weapons barred even as their hostility was plain to sense on the psychic matrix. They were arrayed in all the colours and styles of the Aspect, some well known, others found only on Ulthwé. He spied among their multitude the white and blue of a dire avenger, the Exarch of the Rising Dawn Shrine. The Vizarch hurried along the twilit corridor, the ambience chilling at his approach, the lighting dimming to a fiery orange to match the wrath of those he passed. His thoughts were a whirl, the voices of those that had come before, the wearers of his armour in ages past, crammed into his mind, distressed and angered by the circumstances. They demanded many things: answers, vengeance, escape. It was impossible to accommodate their raging, whining pressure, and the Vizarch faltered, assailed by the spirit's insistent presence. They were emboldened by the circuitry of Khaine, the blood stench of the shrines invigorating their warlike desires. The Vizarch forced them back, meeting their war hunger with the yawning emptiness of Aeneiad's gift, quelling their cacophony. He strode up to the Exarch and bowed in formal greeting. The Exarch gave no such polite response. The face of her helm styled in a blank mask that watched him impassively. He turned, startled as though by someone behind him, though he only saw the long shadows of the Exarchs as they gathered around him. "Traitor!" they willed, filling his soul with their condemnation. Without thought, he pulled free Azuvar and brandished it at the priests of the bloody-handed god. Its blade crackled with the energy of so many nearby spirit stones, and he felt the hunger of the sword, the yearning of Aeneiad to feed. "I do not attempt to outrun my fate," he told them, taking a step, parting the ring of warriors with sheer force of will. "Nor do I hide behind the cloak of Khaine, as I once did. Death takes us all, eventually. When mine comes, I shall meet my master. Which of you can say as much?" Buoyed by his petty triumph, lauded by the crooning souls inside his head, the Vizarch swept past, paying no further heed to the damned warriors around him. Though he had been one of them, trapped in the same cage, he had broken free and, by circuitous route, returned to become their savior. Larian Starspeaker is the champion of the Inari. Once an exarch of Craftworld Biel-Tan, pledged to the Shrine of the Silvered Blade, this mentor of the promising warrior, Amharok, taught the future Corsair everything she knew of swordsmanship. Establishing a strong bond of affection for Amharok, Larian felt pain at her decision to develop her talents as a witch of the Drukhari Covens, having mastered no path of her own, growing bored of each of their creeds. Utterly heartbroken by his student's decision to fight within the gladiatorial arenas of the Dark City, Larian likewise ventured to Komora, usurping the Clavex of the Shrine of the Coiled Blade, relinquishing his former name as he became known as the Scarlet Incubi. Honing his mastery of the blade, as Amharok began to earn a reputation as the champion of Lady Aurelia Malice, Archon of the Cabal of Poison Tongue, as Drabel Vecht would demand a duel of honor against his own seneschal, Lelith Hesperax. Though a skilled combatant, Amharok would be struck down by Hesperax, a precision cut to her heart's artery, allowing for a slow death as a disciple of Morai Heg delivered the killing blow. Reborn through the power of the Whispering God, Inayad, Komora fell to ruin as the immense psychic energy wrought immaterial tears within its domains, spilling forth countless demonic entities. Abandoning his shrine with his coiled bladesman at his side, the warrior, now known only as the Vizarch, fought his way to his fallen student, aiding the now emissary known as Ivrain to a nearby spine dock. Aided by her witchkin, known as the Bloodbrides during their battle to freedom, a slumber curse cast by the demonette, the Mask of Slaanesh, forestalled their advance, as even the Vizarch clutched his head in pain. Saved by the Harlequins of Kegarak in their escape, their solitaire guided the survivors to freedom from the Dark City as the events of the Night of Revelations drew to a close. Venturing to Ivrain in the Vizarch's shared craftworld of origin, Biel-Tan, the burgeoning death cult of the Inari attempted to convert souls to their cause, promising emancipation from the predations of She-Who-Firsts. Aiding their plight during the demonic invasion of the craftworld by the greater demons, Skarbrand and the Mask, their sealing of the portal of Ursulia could not prevent massive damage being sustained by their infinity circuit. The Phoenix Lord of the Howling Banshees, Jane Zar, pledging her blades to the opener of the Seventh Path, the warrior swore an oath to aid their mission to procure the 5 Crone Swords, which would act as a catalyst to fully awaken the Whispering God. Ivrain in possession of the first, Karvir, the Sword of Sorrows, Craftworld Biel-Tan initially proved hesitant in handing over their own Crone Sword, Azuvar, the Sword of Silent Screams. Witnessing Ivrain's power, summoning the avatar of the Whispering God, the Incarn, fueled by the dead of their infinity circuit, the emissary had succeeded where Farseer Eldred Ulfran had failed, during his ritual upon the world of Koheria. Every demon banished from Biel-Tan's domains, the Vizarch was entrusted with the Sword of Silent Screams, his former kinsmen pledging to aid the Inari as they aided in the restoration of their craftworld, harnessing the power of the Whispering God and timely intervention of Craftworld Ulthwé. Pledging many warriors of Biel-Tan to venture forth as new members of the Inari, including the venerable Autarch Meliniel. Within the dome of the Crystal Seers of Ulthwé, Ivrain met with the Ulthwéan Council, presenting the Incarn for their own eyes to see. Petitioning aid to gather 2 further Crone Swords, the Vizarch proclaimed that tales of such blades cited them to be buried within the heart of the planet of Belial IV, a protectorate of Ulthwé. Kaisadorus the Anchorite, wisest of all Ulthwé Farseers, returned from his self-imposed imprisonment, forewarning great doom from their presence. A mere smattering of Ulthwé sympathizers and the Harlequins of Midnight Sorrow, joining the Inari's ranks, following their procurement of the 3rd Crone Sword, Lilith Zar, the Sword of Souls. Eldred Ulfran, abandoning Ulthwé in deference to join the Inari, this infamous Farseer of legend would not allow a chance to revive the Eldar god of the dead, slip through his fingers again. Venturing to the frozen moon of Clasus, the Inari rescued the Celestinian survivors of the fall of Cadia from Black Legion pursuers. An alliance made to reach the realm of Ultramar as Archmagos Belisarius Cawl sought to reach the crowning jewel of the Ultramarines, Macragge. Ambushing the calamitous Black Legion invasion at the side of his charge, the Vizarch cut down swaves of Chaos Space Marines supported by Dire Avengers, Incubi Warriors, and the Black Templars of Marshal Amalric. Annihilating the Black Legion in their wake, the defenders of Ultramar spared few attentions, beset as they were by attacks from the Alpha Legion, Emperor's Children, and Dayan Warriors. The Inari withdrawing through a webway portal, leaving only the Vizarch and Ivrain as a gesture of good faith to the humans. Storm Ravens of the Ultramarines ushered the Eldar and their Celestinian companions to the Fortress of Hera. the Vizark sparring with Marshal Amalric as they whittled away hours of confinement. Yvraine spoke with Belisarius Cawl, having noticed the cargo stowed among his most well-guarded spoils, dragged from Cadia. Chapter Master Marneus Calgar, meeting with the band of misfits. First Captain Agamon would advise confining the interlopers until the war on Macragge had ceased. Chief Librarian Varro Tigurius, having foreseen troubled visions for many days, stayed the hand of his kin as Black Legion forces breached the sanctuary of their dormant Primarch, as Yvraine and Cawl busied themselves with ritual of machine and arcana. Witnessing the rebirth of the Avenging Sun, Roboute Guilliman, thanks in part as a result of the power of the Whispering God. The Vizark defended his mistress as she followed the returned son of the Emperor's charge into the enemy, ensuring the purge of the Black Legion for weeks of combat, until Roboute Guilliman ready to depart for his Terran crusade. A renewed mutual respect between their species had been forged from battle, as the Vizark exchanged a bow to the Primarch's curt nod. Procuring the Rose of Isha from the Guardians of the Black Library as they ventured through the webway, the invasion of the Thousand Sons exile, Arzek Araman, proved to be a mere trifle of an impedance as they cast his men into the void beyond its walls. Securing the Hand of Darkness artifact from within the Whispering Tower of the Garden of Nurgle, under advisements of Eldrad and Tigurius, though the Vizark worried them to be nothing more than little hunting hounds for the humans, their escape would be secured with minimal casualties. Entrusting the Hand of Darkness to Eldrad, before convening a council within Craftworld Ulthwé, inviting the Spirit Seer, Ayana Arianal of Craftworld Ayendon to join them. As Yvraine discussed their next course of action, the Vizark rebuffed the ire of the Aspect warriors within, who deemed him a traitor to the call of Kayla Mencha Kane. Wrestling with his dual allegiances, as a warrior and champion of the Reborn, the Vizark regardless aided the expedition to the Craftworld of Zuasafra in efforts to activate the portal to the Well of Souls, the Gate of Malice, and secure the last Cronesword. Their journey interrupted by the Shadowseer, Laedalin Starshon, each of the pilgrims were shown a perilous future of their actions, the Vizark refusing to elaborate on his own vision, causing his comrades to treat him with suspicion. Finding the Zezafuri to be corrupted by a Genestealer cult, the Vizark cut down the multi-limbed aggressors, aiding Yvraine's summoning of the Incarn. Entering the Gate of Malice by the Daughter of Shadeside, outside the tomb of Eldanesh, the first avatar of Cain, the War Shard awakened the bloodlust within all the disciples of the Path of the Warrior. The Vizark overwhelmed with fury as he attacked Yvraine. The Edge of Azuvar impaled the emissary of Inniad, ending her life as the Inari forced the War Shard to stumble. Realizing what he had done, the Vizark's grief would be forestalled as the Incarn burst from her form, shedding tears onto her lifeless corpse. The avatar of Inniad hurling her into the sky before seeping into her form and restoring her to the land of the living. Casting down the War Shard as she struck the earth alike to a bolt of lightning, Yvraine demanded the crestfallen Vizark to stand, before exchanging words with him that only his ears have ever been permitted to hear. Resolving to never imperil his emissary's survival again, having found no trace of the Cronesword within the tomb of Eldanesh, the Vizark aided the Inari's continued search to the tomb world of Agara Mythia. Aided by the Fireheart Wildrunners of Craftworld Bialtan, upon making planetfall upon the activating Necrontyr stronghold, the Vizark saved the life of his charge from multiple Canoptek wraiths. Managing to reach the Panaphatic Vault, following a costly charge against the Necrons, Eldrad's activation of the Pyramid caused demons of the Warp to spill from its domains. Its nature as a prison for pathways leading directly into the realm of chaos, now known to the Inari. Withdrawing from the fray as the Warden of the Dark and Feroch of the prison planet Septa Ploraki, Hazepfut led the Inari to a parley, her army standing down as she explained that only an Eldar can seal the portals from the other side of their activation. Fighting by the side of Yvraine, the War Shard, now reborn within the body of Autarch Millennial Pureheart, the Incarn, and an imprisoned shard of the Catan, the Vizark watched as the daughter of Saimhan, Kaedalin, raced through the portal, sacrificing herself to banish the demons from Agara Mythia. Once more thwarted in their attempts to retrieve the final Cronesword, the efforts of Shalaxi Hellbane saw to its destination, lurking within the heart of Slaanesh's domains, potentially dooming the Inari to never achieve their goal. Yet so long as the Vizark lives, those that wish to harm the emissary of Inniad shall fall, for upon her shoulders rests the fate of the entire species.